Americans mark this Juneteenth holiday with marches and rallies nationwide to commemorate the emancipation of slaves in the U.S. more than a century and a half ago. It was a day of celebration and an urgent call to action. Amna Nawaz has our report.
Across the country, massive gatherings on a scale many say is long overdue. From Oakland, California, to Atlanta, Georgia.
I want to be here amongst the people that I grew up with in order to form some type of unity.
Meanwhile, in Galveston, Texas,
District of Texas,
a reading of the military order that on June 19, 1865, informed the last group of enslaved people here they were free. That was 2 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. President Trump has claimed credit for raising awareness of Juneteenth after planning a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, home to the 1921 Tulsa massacre in which white mobs killed hundreds of black residents. Trump postponed the rally to Saturday and today tweeted a warning salvo to any, quote, protesters, anarchists, agitators, looters, or lowlifes. Juneteenth is not a federal holiday, but 47 states and the District of Columbia now recognize the day as a holiday or observance. In Virginia and New York, it's now a paid holiday for state workers. And corporations from Twitter to Target, Nike to the NFL have also made Juneteenth a paid holiday. But as Juneteenth is remembered, history is revisited. In Washington, D.C., a monument for George Preston Marshall, the man who refused to integrate the city's professional football team, was removed. In Decatur, Georgia, cranes pulled down a 112-year-old Confederate monument. And in Brooklyn, New York, a reflection on how far the country has come.
For a very long time, Juneteenth was not recognized. It was not celebrated. Not heavily, right? And over the course of the weeks, it took people like you who finally heard the struggles that we've been struggling for years in our community.
As this next chapter in history is still being written. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Amna Nawaz.
We'll have more on the Juneteenth holiday and take a closer look at the history of racial violence in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right after this news summary. The mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, said that one of the officers involved in the killing of Breonna Taylor will be fired. 2 other officers remain on administrative reassignment, pending the investigation into the shooting inside her apartment in March. Meanwhile, the Atlanta police officer who shot Rayshard Brooks to death waived his initial court appearance today. Garrett Rolfe faces felony murder and other charges. There are new concerns today that the COVID-19 pandemic is accelerating. The World Health Organization reported that the largest single-day uptick in global cases to date. Nearly half of the 150,000 new coronavirus infections are in the Americas.
The world is in a new and dangerous phase. Many people are understandably fed up with being at home. Countries are understandably eager to open up their societies and economies. But the virus is still spreading fast. It is still deadly, and most people are still susceptible.
Yesterday, 5 U.S. states, Florida, South Carolina, Texas, Arizona, and California all set new daily records for infections. Today, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert and a White House health advisor, said it is, quote, unfortunate and frustrating that some Americans are not following recommended health guidelines to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The U.S. Navy today upheld the firing of an aircraft carrier captain who warned of the spread of COVID-19 aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt. About a quarter of the 5,000 sailors aboard ultimately became infected with the virus, including one who died. The Navy says the virus came aboard during a port call to Vietnam. Nick Schifrin has this story.
Judy, it was a remarkable scene at the Pentagon. The Navy's top officer, Admiral Michael Gilday, excoriated the captain of the TR, Brett Crozier, accusing him and his boss, Rear Admiral Stuart Baker, of failing to prevent that COVID-19 outbreak. They were accused of being too slow to evacuate sailors and for endangering the entire ship when they moved some infected sailors out of quarantine. All of that happened before Crozier's alarming March email that leaked and started this crisis. Today, Gilday said that email was unnecessary because other officials were already taking the steps that Captain Crozier was recommending. Today's announcement was also a reversal for the military, which initially suggested that Crozier be reinstated. The Navy will not hold more senior officials responsible, even those who approved that port visit to Vietnam. As for the ship, it's back at sea. Judy?
And thank you, Nick. President Trump, meantime, pledging to renew efforts to end protections for those brought to the U.S. illegally as children. Yesterday, the Supreme Court rejected his action to end the DACA program. Today, the president tweeted that his administration, quote, will be submitting enhanced papers shortly, but he didn't provide any further details. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany followed up this afternoon.
We're looking at documents currently, and we're going to move forward in a responsible way and cure some of the remedies and the unlawfulness that we see with the previous memo that brought DACA into place. But we want to find a compassionate way to do this.
Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that the president does have the authority to end DACA, but his reasoning was, quote, arbitrary and capricious. Chief Master Sergeant Joanne Bass has been selected to be the next Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. She will also be the first woman in U.S. history to serve as the highest-ranking non-commissioned officer to lead one of the U.S. military services. Bass has been in the Air Force for nearly 30 years. In the presidential campaign, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar is no longer vying to be presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden's running mate. The former presidential candidate said late Thursday he should use the opportunity to heal this nation, in her words, by picking a non-white woman instead.
America must seize on this moment. And I truly believe, as I actually told the vice president last night when I called him, that I think this is a moment to put a woman of color on that ticket.
Klobuchar's decision comes amid protests over racial inequities that began in her home state after the killing of George Floyd by a white police officer in Minneapolis. A federal judge in California has approved Pacific Gas and Electric's plan to exit bankruptcy. Its outdated equipment sparked wildfires that killed more than 100 people. PG&E will now pay more than $25 billion to victims' families and businesses that were impacted by those fires. Stocks were mixed on Wall Street today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 208 points to close at 25,871. The Nasdaq rose 3 points, and the S&P 500 slid 17. A passing to note tonight, acclaimed British actor Ian Holm has died from a Parkinson's-related illness. Holm played Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogy. He was also a longtime member of the Royal Shakespeare Company and known for his award-winning performance in the title role of King Lear. Ian Holm was 88 years old. And an abandoned bus in the Alaskan woods, made famous by the book and movie Into the Wild, has been removed over safety concerns. State officials said that tourists routinely needed rescuing from the site, where they paid homage to a young man who died of starvation there in 1992. An Alaska National Guard helicopter airlifted the bus from near Denali National Park to an undisclosed site. Still to come on the NewsHour, the United States continues to grapple with racial inequality on this Juneteenth. George Floyd's killing sparks widespread protests and demands for justice across Africa. Wearing a mask becomes an increasingly political act as the pandemic persists, and much more.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.